What's the most surprising company policy you've encountered that the public doesn't know about? At AutoZone, answering the phone was priority over the customer standing in front of you. The idea was the customer standing in line is already a guaranteed sale while a phone call is potential for more. I work for a utility company and we have storm duty. The basic idea is that whenever there's a big storm and enough people lose power, everyone in the company drops what they're doing and has a role to play to keep the public safe and get people restored faster. Some examples. Office workers may get sent out to put caution tape up around down wires or to help with triage efforts. Call center workers may switch from taking customer calls to do dispatching for all the extra people who get sent out into the field, both employees and repair crews from other utilities who get called in to assist. Extra IT workers may get called on to monitor systems related to outage reporting or dispatching crews 24/7 while they're under load. I work for a small family-run bakery. They own 2 shops. If you have cancer, they keep you on the payroll. You get full pay for 2 years, then half pay for another 2 years. I've heard a lot of people shit on family-owned workplaces. Yes, some of them deserve it, but not all of them. I've honestly never heard of any place else that has done anything like that for their people. During COVID times, if we tested positive for COVID, we weren't allowed to send proof, and we weren't allowed to discuss it over the phone. You had to go in, show them the test, then you were sent home. I worked for a very large corporation. We were not allowed to ride in hot air balloons. I have no idea why, but it was in the employee handbook. At a hotel I worked at, somebody fucked up the employee handbook. During fires, we were to huddle indoors away from windows, and during tornadoes, we were to wait outside in the parking lot. I work in healthcare. During COVID, we were so short-staffed that employees who tested positive but were asymptomatic were denied PTO/sick leave. They just made you wear a mask. And if you wanted to be off because you were sick with something that wasn't COVID, you had to call the agency nurse, describe your symptoms, and she would decide if you got to stay home or not. Even if you felt like death, if you were not deemed contagious, you were fully expected to come in. Because of that policy in several healthcare agencies, I think a lot of patients would be surprised and possibly disturbed to know that they were being taken care of by staff actively ill and even COVID positive. I worked in IT for an insurance company. Whenever anyone filed a claim on their automobile policy, before the company did anything, they sent a letter that said they had investigated the claim and determined it was without merit. However, if the claimant wished to have the decision reviewed, they could, but should be aware of the specific penalties for insurance fraud in their state. Most people called screaming about how the accident was not their fault. Those claims were handled promptly and professionally, but they assumed some percentage of the claimants were too intimidated to complain. I never worked there, but Discount Tire has a policy of never letting a customer drive off the lot with potentially dangerous tires, bald, poor condition, etc. There are many stories of people who can't afford tires going in there and just begging for what they can get. They'll replace them for free. At a retail chain I worked for, they had a policy where employees had to clock out for bathroom breaks. This wasn't common knowledge outside the company, and it felt really unfair and demeaning. It made a lot of us upset and frustrated, as we had to carefully plan when we could use the restroom without losing pay. This is from school, so it may not count, but my primary school banned us from reading at break times. When I was a F&B department head for a large golf resort, I was tasked with bringing new blood into the department. Problem was that I could not increase my head count, and if someone left, I could not place a request in until after their last day. The process of hiring someone new took about 10 weeks, in which time I would be short-handed. I would get shit from my boss that certain people were still there, then get shit for paying overtime. When I would bring this up to my HR recruiter, she would just give me a knowing look. Basically middle management hell. Old workplace decided to have a weekly compulsory company meeting that started and finished outside business hours. At PNC Bank, if you transfer money from one of your accounts with them, for example from money market into checking, they put a hold on the money for several days, so if you are writing a check W using the transferred money, you can incur an insufficient funds fee. They tried that crap on me, but when I threatened to pull everything, they waived the insufficient funds fee. Many airlines intentionally overbook flights, betting that some passengers won't show up. When too many people do, they offer incentives for volunteers to give up their seats. It's a calculated gamble, prioritizing profits over customer convenience and satisfaction. Unlimited paid time off policies are scams. When employees have vacation balances in their accounts, companies have to carry the value of that time as a liability on their balance sheets. Some genius figured out that by offering unlimited time off, employees don't take any more time off than they would under the limited time off system. Some studies suggest employees actually take less vacation with unlimited PTO, but then the company carries zero liability on their balance sheet. Edit the replies below like, "No, I love my unlimited PTO." Show that people truly don't understand the impact of these policies, or understand what it even means. I work at a smallish company. We have 50 branches. Each branch has an Associate of the Year winner. That winner gets airfare for 2 anywhere in continental US, hotel paid for, a week PTO, and spending cash for the trip. Best company I've ever worked for. My favorite one was that if a customer sexually harassed us, we should deal with it because the customer is always right and it keeps them coming back. I work for a company that has a fairly relaxed dress code. Exposed tattoos are fine as long as they don't depict sex, drugs, or gang symbols. T-shirts and sweatshirts are permitted as long as they have the company logo. Sandals are allowed if you wear socks. But the one thing I find ridiculous is that we cannot wear anything with a hood on it. If it has a hood on it, don't leave your office. You will get in trouble for it. If a Google employee dies, their surviving spouse or partner receives 50% of their base salary for 10 years, and any child receives an additional $1,000 per month. This is in addition to a life insurance-based policy of 3x1's annual salary and the immediate vesting of all unvested stock units. In the US, flood zone maps are modified by Congress and lobbying. It's not a pure science and engineering map. Christmas Day comes out of London Tube staff's annual leave allowance despite the fact that the entire tube system is closed on Christmas Day. When I worked at a major cable internet provider, it wasn't that we weren't giving you a credit because we didn't want to. We weren't giving you a credit because it went against our scorecard and we'd get in trouble. Call at the beginning of the month and you'll get more love. One of the most surprising company policies I've encountered was at a retail store I worked at. They had a strict, no asking for time off during holidays rule, which makes sense. But what people don't know is that we actually had a secret list of employees who were allowed to take time off during these peak times, based on favoritism. It was kept very hush-hush to avoid any backlash. I've worked at a lot of hospitals and only 2 have had this policy, but the fact that any do is absolutely mind-blowing to me. If a patient leaves AMA against medical advice, but then comes back within a certain time frame, 6 hours at my current place, they do not need to be re-triaged in ER. They can be returned to their previous floor. Thankfully, this is not a well-known policy, and in the 6 years I've worked there, I've only had it actually happen once. Worked for a computer gaming company, and we could give out in-game items of certain value or other items of certain value if we had a very strong reason to do so. That was so much fun. Comcast, now Xfinity, likes to fuck you over, and then when you complain enough, they verbally promise credit what not only to fuck you over even more. I worked for a state government, and they had a policy stating you could be required to sleep at the building at times of bad weather due to staffing requirements, and they weren't obligated to give you breaks or lunch breaks. We had people regularly forced to stay for 20 hours. I think it's possible to understand why it's a scam, but also enjoy using it when it isn't offered in a malicious way. At my company, we are encouraged to take our unlimited PTO, and many of us take off 4 to 6 weeks a year with no issues. Yes, there are downsides such as not being able to cash out on unused PTO when leaving the company, but in the rare case there isn't stigma against PTO at your office, I think it is a plus. I once worked for an engineering subcontractor. They had 0 PTO, sick time, or vacation allowed, in addition to literally any HR department to help them meet any basic federal or state requirements. They were absolutely livid when they learned there were state and federal PTO minimums that had to be met. So much so, they actually calculated it out and reduced each employee's pay by that amount. I left to work for a competitor in flagrant violation of a non-compete, now illegal, for 50% more, plus actual benefits. They were making money hand over fist with no regard for their employees. I'm happy to report they barely even have a foothold in that industry today. If you are an American Express Platinum member and you book a bargain vacation package, your Platinum benefits do not apply. It's there in the fine print on the website, somewhere. LOL, work-life balance has become the new boogeyman for lots of companies. If you request any specific days or times off, you might as well tell the company that you don't want to work and won't show up any other times. They love to say flexible schedules and such, but that just means they want you to be on call 24/7 and sent home as soon as you are not profitable. I worked for a private company with a cool reputation where you found you needed to meet with a Christian counselor once you had been with them for a while. They insisted it was fine if you weren't Christian, but I also didn't work there a lot longer after. Some DAOs require you to return any viruses you have made. Fortunate 50 company makes hardware and some software. If a student literally shoots another student but isn't immediately charged and arrested, they can still attend class, and in fact we're supposed to let them, until such a time they are arrested and charged. So students can basically be made to attend with their attempted murderer, not just with their rapist like we always knew about. There is a wedding venue company in San Diego that makes their clients and all vendors sign basically an NDA, disallowing them from speaking ill of the company, venues, or their experiences. I will never understand how that isn't a red flag for people. I worked for a company where all men had to wear suits Monday through Thursday, shirts could only be white or light blue. Ties couldn't have any graphics on them aside from lines or dots. One guy wore a tie with teeny golf clubs on it, and the owner sent him home to get a different tie. He lived an hour away. Starbucks has an official policy that the caramel drizzle bottles can't be used for hand soap at the sink. Also, according to the official policy, Venti ice drinks come with the short straw by default unless they're served with a dome lid. Enforcing that is a really fun way to piss off a customer that's acting like an asshole without doing anything wrong. When for-profit salespeople quit or get fired, it's on demand, and they don't get comped for their current pipelines. Someone donated a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, diabetes device for monitoring blood sugar, to the Goodwill I work at, and I, a type 1 diabetic, was told to throw it out because we don't have any place to put it.